What's a San Francisco accent?
I think it's a little faster, and I think it's more factual. I think there's fact. With San Francisco, it's about fact. This is truth. This is real. This is present tense. San Francisco, now.
Welcome to Forum. I'm Mina Kim. Fred Armisen, best known for Saturday Night Live, Portlandia, and playing Uncle Fester on the series Wednesday, is also really intrigued by the way things sound. From sort of pure sounds like the needle on a record, to the sounds of specific scenarios, like when room service arrives and reveals your food.
Ooh.
He's collected 100 or so of these sounds on a new album called 100 Sound Effects. And Fred Armisen joins me now. Welcome to Forum, Fred.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So glad to have you. That room service one we just heard, what were you wanting to capture with that?
There's something about, I feel like the covers that they have are always pretty loud. You know, those metal covers, no matter what, if it's early in the morning. So it's almost like it's part of the ritual of getting room service is that dome, that metal dome.
Right. And always that ooh is sort of the, when they're like raising it, it's almost like something that you would naturally say as if they're presenting something incredibly special to you. Right?
Yeah, or even when you do it yourself. So let's say they bring it in and then no matter what's there, I think you just say, ooh. Like, even if it's just a grilled cheese sandwich, even if it's just fries, just the fact that it's showed up in your room is enough to say, ooh. It's not, it doesn't have to be fancy.
Right. And that was a pretty short one, but you have these longer sort of scenarios too, almost like that one was like a mini sketch, but then you have ones that last quite a bit longer, like music venue employee kicking everyone out while throwing away bottles. Let's hear a little bit of that one.
Are not with the band. Please leave. We are closed. Out you go. If you don't have an orange wristband, please leave. If you're not with the venue or the crew, please leave. We are closed. Out you go.
So, first of all, is that you
That's
being the
me.
that is your voice?
Yeah. Yes.
I had no idea. When someone suggested to me that was you, I was like, wait a second. That is not him.
Yeah, yeah. It's that impatience because people are still hanging around, and so this person really wants to go home.
Right.
Like, please leave. Out you go. And it's like a repetitive tone, so that it's annoying enough that everyone really does say, I guess we should leave.
Yeah. Yeah. You had to get that tone just right. Did a lot of work go into getting that particular piece of sound?
That one, yes, because I did these mostly in recording studios, and to get the layers, there's a lot I kind of assumed that those sounds would just be there. But then as I'm building these layers, I realized, oh yeah, I need the sound of patrons at the bar. I need the sound of bottles just can't be, a singular bottle going into a trash can. It has to sound like they're piling on top. So a little bit, and I thought it would be easy. I actually went in thinking all I have to do is say, please leave over and over. And then I realized that there has to be a lot more going on.
And that happened a lot, right? That
Oh,
recording
yeah.
sounds that you thought would be relatively simple to get actually ended up being really challenging.
Yes. And maybe that's a good surprise. But I, especially with outdoor things or anything that has a constant noise going through it, like the sound on an airplane. There's so many sounds on a plane, on a flight, that I kind of took for granted would just be there. But there's a lot of small talk. There's just there are a lot of bins closing, bins opening. There's a lot of like clicking going on planes, and conversation. People on their own phone conversations, people talking to each other. The flight attendants. There's a lot, and little dings and little bings and things going on, and camping. That that took a lot, many layers
Yeah.
of sounds of birds and things like that.
Because there's just so much you can't account for. Even when you could account for it, like with wine glass breaking,
Yeah.
it was hard to like isolate the perfect wine glass breaking sound.
Oh, yeah. It was like I went to this place where you could smash glass. It's for entertainment. It's a place in the valley where it's almost like laser tag. You go and you can break plates and mugs and things, and you wear a jumpsuit.
Yeah.
But the sound of a glass breaking, if you do it for real, if I really did use a champagne glass or what are those called, flutes? Um,
Yep.
they barely sound like anything. It's a bit it didn't register as a sound of broken glass on the recording. It just sounded like so those I had to sort of fake. That was a bigger glass disguised as a smaller glass, as a whatever, a wine glass or whatever, where it would be a drinking glass, and then that's what I had to use. So that's false advertising, I guess.
Well, so how did you balance that actually? The idea of wanting to get sort of these pure sounds, but then at the same time, having to create a scenario where the expectation of that sound would meet?
I would say it was the sound comes first. Like it was most important that it sounded accurate to the listener. And then the title, I think that the power of suggestion of if the title is wine glass or whatever, then that should be enough to sort of picture it in your head. Or whatever. If that's 50% of it is what the title is.
We're talking with Fred Armisen about his new album of sound effects, which capture sounds like a wine glass breaking or sometimes overlook sounds at music venues, camping, airplanes. Listeners, what's a sound you'd record or would want to have in a sound effect library decades from now? Or what do you want to ask or tell Fred Armisen? You can tell us by emailing forum@kqed.org, finding us on Discord, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, or Threads at KQED Forum, or by calling 866-733-6786, 866-733-6786. Is there a Fred Armisen character or joke that you frequently reference, or maybe a sound effect you want Fred to try to make live on air?
I
Fred,
could
tell
try
me,
my best. Sure.
yeah. Tell me why you wanted to do this. Like why you wanted to create an album of sound effects.
It was just I think audiences, they need it. That no, it was just I kind of was just thinking about them in existence in my whole life and in your life. The sound effects records have they've just been around, especially around Halloween. There'll be Halloween sound effects, and it was just a sort of like a curiosity, like where are those albums? Where's the new one? Where do they come from? And the more it kept presenting itself to me in my head, I just thought, well, why don't I just do a little? Why don't I just do a few sound effects? Let's see what that's like. And then it just kind of kept going from there. It had its own momentum. And then I treated it seriously, as opposed to just doing a few recordings and it being a joke. I thought, what if I really approach this like a serious project and really record and really go to a recording studio? Don't just do it on my phone. Then it'll force me to put some, I don't know, quality control into it. Then it'll force me to try to, and it did. The more I kept recording, the more I saw what was missing. So I would do like, the music ones were easy in concept. So if there was a music venue, if there's there's one that's like a music store, like Guitar Center, bands tuning up, all that stuff, great. Those I knocked out in a couple days. But then I realized I need some outdoor ones. These all sound like they're in a studio. Where are the camping ones? And then how about travel? How about airplanes? How about going to other countries? So I just kept finding what was missing and filling that in.
And so that's essentially how you were choosing the sounds that you would include in there. I heard that you were hoping that it's sort of like a sound library, like people
Yeah,
would turn to it as a reference.
sure. Because it might be fun for now, but I hope that in 20 years it's something that could be sort of useful for something time specific. The way that car doors close or something like that. And then for the present day, Yeah, I mean it's a wish. It's a hope that someone will use some of these recordings. And the camping one specifically, I did those with Tim Heidecker, and my hope for those is that someone will use it as background noise. As so, if there's a scene of let's say there's a scene of someone being stranded in the forest, and they say, "Wait, I hear there are campers over there." That's all you need. It wouldn't be front and center. It's just an effect for, um, a bigger scene.
Well, we pulled the car door closing car rental one, so I just want to play that really fast.
Sure. Now, is it locked? No. There we go.
So is that an example of trying to capture a moment in time as well? Because you mentioned car door closing in that context.
Yeah, not really. It's not. It could, if we listen to it focused on it, then yes. But the idea is, if there's a scene where someone's renting, that could be in the background. That's in the background of a scene where there's a car rental parking lot, and you hear someone still struggling with their car or whatever. Or maybe it's a wedding and someone rented a car. It's something that's sort of played in the background. As far as observation, I guess it could be. It's more how we act around car rental doors. In my opinion, and we could turn this into a debate, but in my opinion, with car rentals, we're all very careful. Like, we're very careful. Did I close it? I don't want to break it. This isn't mine. I think it's locked, because it's usually like a newer version of locking. So, I think it locked automatically, or it didn't. So it's that kind of thing. As opposed to our own cars, where we kind of slam it a little easier, and we know when it's locked.
So it's really about also noticing human nature and how we would respond in certain moments, right? That's also what you're capturing.
Yeah, like in teeny little slivers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're coming up on a break. Again, let me remind listeners we're talking with Fred Armisen, and I see your calls and comments, and we'll get to them. He has put out a new album of sound effects, and we're talking about the sounds that you would want to capture and preserve from our everyday lives as well. Stay with us. You're listening to Forum. I'm Mina Kim. Welcome back to Forum. I'm Mina Kim. We're talking about sound with actor, musician, comedian Fred Armisen. Here is his campfire conversation.
Yeah, this is a good one. Hand me that log. Stoke it.
I'm still mad that they made us both show ID, and then there's another gate. That must have been 50 feet past that one, and then show ID again.
There should just be one entry point, and
That's
that's
wild.
you show it there. And we had the reservation. We had the thing on the phone.
Yeah, they've seen me before too. That's the other thing, and I'm like, you've seen me. They should have a system where they communicate with each other. I wanted to say something, and I wanted to get
Yeah,
here.
like the reservation system is completely separate from the whole security thing.
Yeah, well.
How did you balance how much you include yourself? Oh, and how much to stage the process of creating a sound?
Well, that was a bunch of tracks, which is funny, because my image of going into a studio is that for sound effects records, you could just go in and do everything on the mic, but that actually was multi-layered with tracks, and some of the crinkling is that old Foley thing of crinkling plastic for the fire, and then the birds, that's a loop from my backyard. So because I live in LA, I had to take short snippets, because otherwise you hear cars and planes and stuff. So I had to take a brief moment of silence of hearing a bird and looping it. And that's Tim Heidecker there. And then when it comes to small talk, when you're alone with someone,
Yeah.
I think our go-to is to complain about something. You just complain about something that you're incensed about. something at the airport, something with the driver, something. So it's just like whereas in the movies it's usually people, pontificating or reminiscing or whatever. I think a lot of art, I think, or maybe this is just me, but uh, I think when you're bored, when you're just sitting around with people, you just complain about a restaurant, you complain about the road. I don't know. So these people are complaining about the IDs they had to show,
Yeah.
um, uh, and yeah, that's how we set that one up.
So as you are collecting these sounds and thinking about the kinds of scenarios, right, that would make good sound effects, what insights did it give you about how we move through life? Because as you're saying, you're noticing that a lot of times one of the things we'll do when we're sitting around and talking with someone is complain, right? So I'm wondering what insights this process might have given you into just say like human nature or the human condition.
I think part of it is that there is a uniformity around the world to it's almost musical, like a tone of a sentence. So if it's a flight attendant, there's a a sort of politeness, even though it's part of the job. There's still something in the passenger that's also just as repetitive. There's like a volume to it. So if a flight attendant says to me, "Are you all done with that?" There's like a tone. I think everyone has the same. No, I'm fine. Thank you. Here you go. Thank you. Like there's a sort of I don't know. There's like a specificity to the way we answer. That's just
Yes.
just as as part of the uniformity of what that is. It's like we just I think we all do it. And with the bouncer at the music venue, I think that guy is everywhere. I think he's in Poland. I think he's in Tokyo. I think it's the same volume and repetitiveness to whatever that is of get out of this bar. I think it's just everywhere. The other thing I learned is how much we don't notice that there is noise, which is
Yes.
fine. It's part of living in a city. I'm not upset about it, but the amount that I had to pause for a siren or a car horn or whatever, it's just there's so much of it, and the same goes for like its absence in a recording. I'm like, it needs more sirens. There's a lot of sirens everywhere.
You clearly have such an attentiveness to sound. Does it ever get overwhelming for you that you notice them so much?
I don't think it gets overwhelming. I mean, I think maybe many people are that way. It might be like a musician thing or a comedian thing. Um, but no, nothing over. And if anything, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
fun, like hearing just it's kind of like it's just something to take note of. Sometimes I think about sounds that I'm gonna miss. Like there are
Mm.
sounds of regular hotel of remote controls, like for the TV. When you turn off, I think those are gonna start going. We're gonna start hearing less and less of like remote control sounds when you're dealing with your TV.
Yeah.
Like I think we've already lost that TiVo sound, that bubbly sound.
Right.
So little things
Right.
like that in our lifetime that are just gonna disappear.
Well, this listener, Winston, is on the line from Oakland. Winston, join us. You're on.
Hi, Mr. Armisen. I don't know if you've ever gotten an MRI, but the sounds while you're getting an MRI inside the machine are quite delightful. This rhythmic clicking and clacking. Your comment about the airplane cabin sounds reminded me of this. I'm getting an MRI today, actually, at 5 o'clock Pacific time. But anyway, yeah, if you've got any tips about how to smuggle, I don't know, some non-metallic
Ooh.
microphone inside an MRI machine without destroying my, you know,
um, uh,
it's quite a challenge to make that recording, I would imagine.
well, some people have described that sound as scary, but also good luck today. I hope that all goes well with the MRI. Um, I'd be the more interesting part of it might be, and this is something you can observe. are what are the jokes that you are inclined to make? When you get in there, I bet people make similar jokes. Hey, I should spend my vacation here or whatever. Some, I think like when people go to get hearing tests, I think they all do the same joke. They all, to the doctor, they'll say, what? Um, so it might be kind of, if you feel like it, you might not have to record anything. Just listen to what the medical professional there says. Maybe there's something that they do all the time. Maybe there's some sort of like really soothing thing that they say, and see if any jokes come up for you that there's a chance that those jokes are being made every day.
Let me thank Winston for the call.
Thank you,
Erica
Winston.
writes, whenever you're on screen, Fred, my spouse will call me over because he knows it will be a shared moment of cracking up over what you're doing. Your stuff is reliably funny to me. One of the ones we go back to often is your portrayal of a Venezuelan ambassador explaining how jail is how they keep order. If I'm cooking fish, I'll mumble to myself, overcook, jail, undercook, jail. Thank you so much for all you do.
Oh, that's really nice. I really appreciate it. That episode was something that I was texting with Mike Shore, the creator of that show, about the idea of sister cities. And then Venezuela was in the news back then. And so it would, they just came up with this idea for, just throwing people into jail for whatever reason. So, but I really appreciate that. That's very, very nice to hear. Thanks for saying that.
Douglas on Discord writes, the Californian skit is so iconic. Where did the Californian skit come from, Fred?
It came from at SNL in New York, as if people don't know it's in New York. But like, but by meaning, we would be, the cast, Keenan, Andy, Bill, Kristen, Jason. We would be at the table read, and our first day back, everyone was in LA. We were all in California working, so we just start doing these jokes of like, where were you? How did you get there? And little by little would stay like turn left on Barham, and I went over it. So it just became this kind of bit that we would do. And then, because it's just like that. I mean, people really, to this day, I still use that terminology for getting on the 5 or the 101. So it just kind of built from there. And the tone was a little bit also, Dana Carvey, and I'm name dropping, also I was doing an impression, a very sweet impression of his son, how much he loved him when he was trying to explain something to him, like, oh, Dad. And so he did this voice, and that was part of it as well. It's an impression of Dana Carvey doing an impression of the California accent as well.
Well, let's play it for Douglas. Here's the Californians.
Hey, honey, I brought us some tangerines. This guy was selling them on the off-ramp over by the 2. Devin? What are you doing here?
Stuart, why are you him so early?
I skipped Wilshire and took Beverly over to Santa Monica and took that all the way up.
So that is like an impression of a Californian, but you're also really well known for doing accents really well.
Well, it's just how I hear the California accent, and when they did sort of like the Valley Girl accent in the 70s and 80s, it was the same kind of thing. There's like a way to talk if you're from Southern California. I always see it as pronouncing every part of the word, hitting every consonant, and every vowel, like really leaning into every part of the word.
What's a San Francisco accent?
I think it's a little faster, and I think it's more factual. I think there's fact. With San Francisco, it's about fact. This is truth. This is real. This is present tense. San Francisco, now.
I always think that like mimicking accents is kind of something that comes naturally to certain people. Like my little brother seemed to have like a knack for mimicking people's voices. And so I'm wondering, did your parents have accents? Like, did you feel like you had a natural ability relative to other people to really hear and mimic the accent?
It's specifically from that. My dad is from Germany and my mom's from Venezuela. And we lived in New York and we moved around. We lived in Brazil for a little while. So in getting to hear other people speak English with different accents in New York, and it just was, there was like a way that it was highlighted, that you could hear the difference. So and also that English was the second language for my parents.
Right. I totally think it's funny how my first experience of English was accented because my parents were both born in Korea. And so they spoke to me in that accented English. And that was like all I
Yeah.
knew until,
Someone
society
else
told me.
pointed
Yeah.
out. Someone else, like, wait, that's an accent. You're like, what?
Can I ask you what it was like to learn after years of thinking that you were a quarter Japanese, that you're actually a quarter Korean?
Yeah, that was really shocking, and it didn't seem real because the reference is to I did this show called Finding Your Roots, and I thought that my
Right.
grandfather was on my dad's side was Japanese, and I really took on traits that I thought were Japanese. Visually, I really like simplicity. All these things you sort of make up about yourself. Like I like, and then turned out to not be the case, and then I had to rethink all of that, and it was really, but it was also amazing. It was amazing to really like redefine. It's like a redefinition of who I am.
So
So
how,
it
yeah.
was it was it was it was a shock, but my family had a lot of mystery anyway. I didn't grow up with this grandfather. My dad grew up in Germany, and so it was already sort of disconnected. So it's almost like if there was a fantastical story, a backstory, and then it just changed a little. Where I was like, well, this whole story is so crazy anyway, that great, I'll take it. But it's really, I will say it's a nice thing now to like, you know, be connected to Korean culture. I'm like, hey, that's part of me now.
Right. I'm wondering when you sort of associated things with the ethnicity and like adopted them in your own life. Are there things that you have adopted that are Korean to you now? Or you're like, oh, my Koreanness explains this trait.
Well, coincidentally, there was this thing happening in American culture where Korea, I mean, this is a little bit before it, all of a sudden, Korean culture was hugely pop culture, with
Yes.
Squid Game and with K-pop and everything. And I
Right.
feel like this isn't my imagination. I just feel like I think this is like this, for lack of a better word, this country is really happening right now. So
We're
I
talking.
sometimes I wonder if countries have a publicist, and I wonder if Korea's publicist was like, we got to get this country out there, and like, let's make this happen. Movies, music, do it. TV shows, go, get out there.
Actually, it was like there was a very concerted effort to get Korean culture out there.
Something worked.
It worked. No, it completely worked. And yeah,
Do,
you
do,
could
do you think Japan's publicist right now is like, guys, what are we doing?
100%.
We were up there.
We're talking with Fred Armisen, and so are you listeners, talking about his sound effects album, 100 Sound Effects, where he captures sounds from everyday life and also his life specifically. Some very pure sounds, some very highly specific scenarios. And you, our listeners, are sharing the types of sounds that you want to hear and also just the kinds of things that you want to ask or tell Fred Armisen. And Reed on Discord writes, I've always enjoyed Fred's quirky sense of humor. He captures odd and idiosyncratic human moments. Could he imitate the sound of closing a toilet seat that you assume is soft close, but instead it slams and the
Oh my
reaction?
God.
Oh, wow. Okay, Reed.
That's a very so that is the sound itself is really quick, and it's like a high pitch like gunk, and it takes you by surprise, but you never want to say anything out loud in a bathroom because it's a private place. So it's a very private. Oh man, ow! I think I say ow, ow. So it's gunk, ow. It's like a quiet little ow of I hate that. I hate that feeling. That feels like a betrayal because you have an agreement with the toilet seat. Like you presented yourself as something that closes slowly. Don't do that. That's a high pitched that affects my eardrums.
Listener Abby says, I'm interested in the sound of various keyboards, one from a new computer, one from an older one with really springy action. Are there keyboard sounds on the album?
No, that's such a good one. That's for maybe for the next one. That's a really really good one. Because that could go even further. a keyboard that you're really familiar with. Keyboard at at an office you're not familiar with, so you're sort of, sometimes it's like slightly different, so you're sort of poking away at it. So I like this as an idea. Also,
Yeah.
the sound of those portable ones for the iPad.
Well, you do have the sound of a keyboard not working at first in a music store.
Right, meaning that's a music keyboard.
Yes, a music keyboard.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
that
different.
one. That is different. Though
Yeah.
I'd love to play it going into the break. We're just about to. Let's hear
Sure.
that.
Excuse me, I don't think this is working. Is this on? Ah, there we go.
We're talking with Fred Armisen about his new sound effects album, 100 Sound Effects, and you just heard keyboard not working at first in a music store. We'll have more with him and with you after the break. Stay with us, listeners. You can call us at 866-733-6786, email forum@kqed.org, post on our social channels on Discord, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, or Threads to talk with Fred Armisen. Tell us a sound you'd record or would want to have in a sound effect library decades from now, or a Fred Armisen character or joke that you frequently reference. Anything you want to ask or tell Fred. More after the break. I'm Mina Kim. Welcome back to Forum. Fred Armisen is with us, comedian, actor, and musician known for Portlandia, Documentary Now, SNL, and his new project is 100 Sound Effects. And we're talking about the types of sounds we'd want to capture and preserve from our everyday lives, and also the Fred Armisen characters or jokes that you have frequently referenced as well. If you're a fan, let us know what you want to ask or tell Fred, or if there's a sound effect you want Fred to try to make live on air. Jesse writes, can you make the sound of finding a spider in your bed right after you fall asleep? The reaction, the frantic capture attempt, the process of shaking out bed sheets.
That one is more, I imagine that as like not a startled scream or a squeal. I think I just picture like moving. Let me see if I can try to find moving around your sheets. Maybe I'll just use my own jacket. And it's an annoyance. It's an annoyance, but you're exhausted, so it's less of like wah and more. So it's a little more annoyance. I hope that sounded like a sheet.
It did.
Okay.
Tank writes, Fred Armisen has a consistent habit of showing up in incredible series and making them even better if he's in it or is otherwise involved in it. The odds are excellent that it's worth watching. One of my favorite examples of this is his role as Geraldo in the HBO Max series Our Flag Means Death.
Oh, yeah.
He's also so much of what made Los Espookies great.
Wow. Thank you a million. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love getting to do stuff like that. Los Espookies was a total joy. I'm so glad that, it was all in Spanish and we got to shoot it in Chile, and it was amazing. I'm glad I got to do it. And Our Flag Means Death was so fun as well.
Yeah. Tom on Blue Sky says, could you talk about your time in the Chicago punk scene with Trenchmouth?
Oh, yeah.
And how that might have influenced your comedy. Yeah, a lot of people know so much about your career.
Oh, my time with Trenchmouth and just touring around is all through the 90s. Huge part of my career. I think, first of all, just all the characters we met on the road. And then, 4 guys in a van driving for 8 hours is just us doing bits and joking around and doing impressions. And these guys are so funny. And I think it's all the travel and then spending all that time with, it's nothing but comical. Music is almost like a very small part of it. Most of it is just going to these towns, finding your way, unloading equipment, loading equipment, dealing with promoters and people who come to the shows and people who run the record label. It's just so many characters, and also a good entryway into accents and everything. So absolutely huge. And then I think also just like, getting to play music in front of people, it's still an audience. So there's like still a relationship of doing something in front of an audience that it like comedy or music, it almost becomes the same thing.
You dreamed of being a musician. What drew you to SNL?
Oh, the B-52s, Devo, Talking Heads, Ricky Lee Jones, um, the Specials.
So the musical guests that they had on initially?
Yes, but meaning that, the musical guest is very much defined by Lorne Michaels. I don't think it's like, oh, we'll just have some music guests, whatever. I think that was his specific message about, because it was important that they all play 2 songs. And some of these bands weren't even that famous. That he was like, this band, Diva, wasn't a well-known band. So there was, I don't mean it like as a sort of separate from the comedy. I think it was in harmony with the comedy. And having the Specials on was a big message to me. There was something about that said to me, come to this show. And at the time, it almost seems delusional to think that the show is sending me a private message to come, but it was. And then over the years, I never stopped watching, just seeing, I always think of Mike Myers, and I just think of Mike Myers like when he did Sprockets, and I loved that sketch before I'd even seen it. Someone explained it to me, someone described it to me, and I thought, I have a connection to this show. There's something about this show that, and
That was like that German, right?
yeah,
Like
that's the one.
artist
I'm
that
like,
you would mimic.
it was incredible. But all through all the Gilda Radner did some characters that were very musical, and every cast member, Eddie Murphy. I mean, the whole run of SNL, I've never stopped watching ever, even now.
So you started doing Portlandia with Carrie Brownstein while you were on SNL, right?
Yes,
So did Portlandia play a role in your decision to move on from SNL?
kind of. It was it made it easier to think, okay, then I could focus more time into doing Portlandia. So it's a tough decision, but every cast member eventually sort of comes to that conclusion. Like it's not even a bad feeling. It's more like, I think I said what I wanted to say. I think I did what I wanted to do, and I'm gonna try this other thing but at the same time, you never leave SNL. There's not one year that I didn't come back and do a couple sketches, or you always end up doing. You're always a part of it.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as leaving.
I've been struck by the fact that Portlandia's been getting a lot of renewed attention, both because it's on Netflix and because Portlandia memes have been used in the protests against ICE. What's it been like for you to see Portlandia have this sort of revival?
It's something fun for me and Carrie to share, because we made this show, so it's really nice. It's like if you're in a band and all of a sudden your singles are getting play on the radio. It's great to connect about that again and say, hey, did you see this? Or so that's the fun part of it. And also that that the humor of it resonates in any way. Great. I'm happy about that.
We pulled the Women and Women First bookstore, where your character Candace, and Carrie Brownstein's character Tony is arguing with Steve Buscemi's character about using the bathroom and not being a paying customer. Let's hear it.
Hi. We have a strict rule that you can't use the restroom unless you're a paying customer. Mm-hmm. It's clearly stated on the door.
Oh, that's what when I went in, the number 4 threw me. I was like...
You couldn't read it?
I spell things out, so when people use numbers to,
What people?
What people do you mean?
Well, like you do. Like
women?
Well, I'm not, I wasn't being,
No, we don't know.
I'm just laughing. I don't want everyone to think I'm just laughing at our own sketches, but Steve, that was all improvised, and Steve Buscemi is so funny. He really
so funny.
plays it so real.
When do you feel like you're at your best in sketches, Fred?
I think when I'm with a lot of other people. I think if there's a group and I do, one or two things that there's something about it that, as long as I'm not like in the dead center, then I'm at my best and I'm having the most fun. So Californians is a good example of that. And Feminist Bookstore too, the fact that like Carrie and Steve are there, there's something about that just it's just much, much better.
Let me go to some more calls and comments. Let me go to Bill next in Oakland. Hi, Bill. You're on.
Howdy. I miss everything associated with a rotary phone. Like, I wish I had recorded the clicks of an outgoing call. But
I know.
mostly, it's such a drag. They engineered out all the satisfaction of slamming a receiver down.
I know. I'm with you on that. Especially the weight of those phones. They were like heavier. The bell was in there, the mechanics of it, the machine. It looked great, and I couldn't agree more.
When you slam it down, it makes the bell ring a
Of
little
course.
bit because there's an actual physical bell.
Yeah.
But then when you were talking about the automatic closed toilet seat, they're going to engineer out the fun of slamming a car door. They're going to make it like with a remote, and it's going to be like we'll lose the fun of the toilet seat. We're going to lose the
I agree.
fun of slamming a car door in anger.
I agree. And we could even, I wonder if there's a theory that the reason there's so much anger in the world is because we don't have these outlets to really express it in these short ways. I think same goes for doors, like, hotel doors have a sort of like, there's like a thud to them. I'm like, oh, where's this? Not that we all like slamming doors, but the phone thing specifically, I think that those people designed it back then. I think there might have been like a secret agreement of like, maybe let's make it so that when you slam it down, you could hear the bell a little. Because now there's no such thing. You just sort of tap and you're disconnected.
Yeah.
So I couldn't agree more. I miss that.
Yeah. And again, just underscoring your point about archive. Melanie says, Melanie, I just went on vacation with my sister-in-law and wanted to capture our 2 toddlers talking. One said, "It's sour." And mine made a shocked face and said, "Sour?" It was hilarious. Can you make the sound of 2 toddlers talking?
Wow. That's the best I can do. I try to make them in the distance.
Depending on the age of the toddler, right? That's like a really long. That's a
Yeah.
big age span.
Yeah, that's a good one. I wonder if, because sometimes they don't even listen to each other. That's a perfect example. 'Cause
Yeah.
they just react to one word, and they just sour. They're almost just repeating it, or they're just repeating each other. It's
you're
never
right.
quite a conversation.
They often play alongside each other as opposed to like with each other too.
Yes,
So
yeah.
yeah. So you'd have to sort of capture that part of it. David writes, Fred is so funny and talented. He has a character on Portlandia who explains in great detail while house sitting how not to hit your head and other body parts in the kitchen.
Yeah.
This character is just like my dad in real life. So my family has gotten many laughs from it over the years.
Oh, I'm so happy about that. That was with Aubrey Plaza, that one, and I'm so glad. I'm not. That makes me curious about. Was that the dad? The father is like
Fred,
that.
you mean David, the listener's dad? Yes.
Yeah.
He said
Yeah.
this character is just like my dad in real life.
So that dad must really over-explain things and act them out. Because I think the joke of this one was that it was acted out over and over. So that's really funny that his dad is so, I guess, really good at explaining things.
Yeah, but I guess it also speaks to something that I've noticed about your comedy, which is that you are striving for almost a universal experience, despite the fact that we are so different. And you talked about this earlier with cadence, right? Or the way that people will say things too. There's almost a universal part of it. So even though the scenarios are really highly specific, for example, in the album, it's like they're so relatable because they're not necessarily very specific to maybe who you are individually or trying to be over the top or something.
Well, I'm just focused on the use of your word cadence. I should have used that word earlier. That's what I meant, cadence. But this is going out live, so we can't edit in me saying the word cadence. I was going for that word, and it just, thank you for that. That's what I meant. All that, I never know. I just to me, these are like little observations, and I never know if it's going to resonate or not. And I'm just happy if anything does.
Yeah, there's just something really comforting in that. In you sharing that and noticing that, especially I guess these days. Let me remind listeners, you are listening to Forum. I'm talking with Fred Armisen. I'm Mina Kim. So tell me, a lot of times people talk about there is like a journey to find out who you are as an artist. And I'm wondering if you feel like you know who you are as an artist, right? Like what it means to make something, Fred Armisen.
Kind of. I mean, if I go out and do stand up, a version of stand up, I could see by people's reaction of like where I land in that. And then the other sort of checklist I do is I just sort of copy what I've admired in other people. So, I think, okay, I want to be a David Byrne type, or I want to be a Mark Mothersbaugh type. Am I in there somewhere? Or Matt Berry, or even Mike Myers. I just sort of go through this little checklist of like, am I in the zone of these people? Maybe. But if I go for it, if I go towards it, at least maybe by the time I'm 70 or something, then maybe I will have accomplished it, or something close to it. So that's all I do. And then I just realized that with the bed, and there's a spider on the bed. I think I'm going to try to do the version of the person also, because I think a lot of people try to save spiders and put it under a cup. So I'll do it real quick. I'll just do. You'll barely hear anything, but it's a person not making a big deal and talking to the spider on the way out. So it's like they see a spider. Oh, come on, little guy. There you go. There you go. I feel better.
I see it. I see it.
Thank you.
Let me go to Jessica in San Mateo. Hi, Jessica. Join us. You're on.
Hi, Fred. Such a huge fan, fellow Latina and punk rocker. So very cool to see what you've done for like the punk scene and bringing it into SNL. Just curious what you feel about the scene today.
I love it. First, thanks for the kind words. I'm not a cynical person, but I went through life thinking at some point this kind of music will die out. And I wasn't being cynical. I was just like, that's just the way things are. And, doo-wop went this one, you don't hear as many doo-wop bands. And at some point, punk won't be the same thing. And I love every new iteration of punk that I hear. And it just makes me feel so good that young people, without even guidance, without even like looking to like, will you help us? They just make these bands. And I feel like, Turnstile is a very popular band, but I'm like, when I hear their music, I think, man, they really did it. They're commercial and punk. And there are just so many bands. There's a band called Control Top that I really like. And this is the name of this band is Bannock and I really like. They're great. There's just so many, I love being surprised. I don't know why I'd be surprised, but I love that it really just keeps happening.
Yeah.
It's the best feeling. And venues too. Someone told me about a place in Portland under a bridge or some venue. They're like, this isn't even a regular venue. We do shows under a bridge. Oh, thank God.
We're coming up on the end of the hour, and you mentioned that as you were collecting sounds, you recognized the sounds that were missing. Are you thinking about doing another album of sound effects?
Yeah. I'd like to do something more specific, because if it looks like, maybe in a couple of years, like I don't want to make it seem like it's like this thing of like a grand moment. But if it's going to look like a library, it should be sort of eventually boring, where there's 10 of them. And I just want to get more specific. So maybe a medical one, specifically medical, one that's specifically sports, one that's specifically a country. Maybe there's one that's only Nigeria, and just get specific with that. What are the car sounds there? What are the, anything like that.
Well, can't wait, Fred. This listener Douglas on Discord writes, "What a surreal feeling to have Fred Armisen talking indirectly to me. I'm not swooning or anything over here."
Oh, you're so nice to have me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, we really appreciate you. It's Fred Armisen. The album is 100 Sound Effects. My thanks to our listeners and also to Caroline Smith for producing this segment. You've been listening to Forum. I'm Mina Kim.